Hold on. Hold on. I'm checking mics. Yeah. Well, I can't tell if we're recording or not. Sorry, I can't tell because I don't know whether the mic is on board. Oh, here, this will tell me. All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. It's this Saturday, the 8th of February, and we're going to do a short conversation about love. Hold on. I need to check with my co-conspirator. All right. It says on my streamcast here that everyone can see and hear you. Well, let's hope that that's true because I never really know for sure whether it is. It's hard for me to tell. So I'm looking for a little feedback to tell me that from Seb, who's out on the road somewhere. So I don't think he can join us, but he might be able to tell me whether or not I'm having an effective recording. All right. Okay. So we'll assume we're recording sound and visual. All right. Sorry for the interruption and this and that, but sometimes on the eve of Super Bowl, you just don't get everything the way you want it. Everybody's scattered around. But I want to keep continuity going with a podcast to build some relationship to love for our audience and to us. And I want to do it by focusing on what at least I'm up to, so that you know what we're doing at the Love Foundry when we work out a workshop in order to bring people into the empowerment with love. Empowerment with love is a very, very amazing thing. It's something unimaginable until it's experienced directly. Then it becomes not only imaginable, but the rest of your life, forever life. So I want to look at it a couple of ways. I want to look at it in terms of why it's such a confusing issue in the world to everybody, not just me and those of people like me. But let me see if I can get this kind of the way I want it here. Yeah. Why is this so damned hard to do for humans? Because it's there right in front of everybody, inside us, inside ourselves. Just go in, open up that invisible curtain, and there it is, the living fire of love itself. The thing, the being, the presence, the one universal, absolute energy of life itself, being itself for you, waiting for you to connect with it and empower yourself by it. Now, this, of course, happened in humanity's experience at the day that Jesus showed up to be baptized at the Jordan River. That's what happened in that moment. In that moment that Elijah had prophesied and tried to prepare the Jews for, and as well as others, and that John the Baptist himself was out there looking for something coming up here that was going to be really spectacular. Everybody seemed to know what was going on, except maybe Jesus. I don't know. He knew too, because he showed up there. He went to see what's up there. But I think what happened was greater than any of them even imagined or ever conceived of. Because this descent upon a human being of this life, this thing, this life that's life itself, is really unimaginable to the average mind of a human being. And not only an average mind, but greater than average mind to a Buddha type mind or one of those. So it probably was extraordinary to all involved, and yet it worked. It made that descent into this man among all men, and he was strong enough, pure enough, consecrated enough within himself to endure it, to take it upon himself and stay steady in the light. And then began a journey with it, a journey that ended, we all know where, with the result that spread that life into the human race at every level, everywhere, throughout the world. For now and for all nows coming forward. So I think that that's a remarkable moment in time, in history, for the human race. And there have been other remarkable moments, and I think that these things occasionally of great magnitude happen. And when they do, people that are involved in what happened recognize to some degree what happened, and so they start a conversation about it. And it can be the 12 labors of Hercules, or it can be some other spectacular event, but they do happen occasionally. But it isn't that it happened or that who it happened in, but it's what the result of it is for us 2,000 years later in terms of availability of event. That event is available to every human being within themselves, which was the point of the whole exercise, to make it available in us, not out there somewhere in the cosmos, inside us, as relationship. But due to the value of free will and the greatness of the use of free will, we have to avail ourselves of that choice consciously by our actions, our declared actions, demonstrated actions, before that can activate in us in a way that brings that power into us. Now, this does not mean at all that you have to join any kind of a church or organization any more now than you had to join the Jewish religion when it happened in Jesus' day. That was the point of the argument between Paul and John and the disciples. When they did get some converts into their new deal, they had the big argument about whether they should become Jewish religious followers. And the argument was no, because Jesus is gone now, right? He's been crucified and risen and all that off somewhere. And so they had to have an argument about it and discuss it and say, no, what he said was, you don't have to do any of that. Just connect through me to this. And so that was how they came down on the argument and said, no, you're right. The Greeks can be Greeks and the Jews can be Jews if they want to be. They don't have to, but they can. So, and that's still true, I think, to this day, to this moment, the beautiful, incredible inner reality that is the presence of that cosmic life present to a human being at its choice still has exactly the same conditions. I mean, it's probably a minute ago to that being. So we look at it from that point of view. But more importantly, we don't have to look at it in terms of anything else we have to do. And that means that if you're having trouble with figuring out what's going on in the Catholic Church, because you're Catholic, and there are things going on there that are very distinct. And I'll give you just a short conversation, and I'm not Catholic. I'm Irish enough to be Catholic, but my mother was Episcopalian enough to not be. So between my dad, who was a McTagg, Irish, Scotch Irish, and my mom, who was a Hardcastle English, they decided kids will just not going to be raised this way. They're not going to be raised that way. So we just raised ourselves, which I guess that was fine because I don't have any problem with either of those groups or any other group. So the point I'm making here is that within the Catholic Church itself, there are complications. And as an example of it is this. Let's see, St. Francis of Assisi, which is happening somewhere around, I don't know, late 1500s, 1600s, somewhere in there. When he went off to the Crusades. He was an interesting guy. Crusaded a couple of times and came back. And then he had this relationship with the soul, his soul. And in that soul, he had communication with what he considered to be the Christ consciousness, which told him, rebuild my church. Well, the church was pretty strong, going powerfully at that time throughout Europe, but there was something about it that needed rebuilding. It had gotten somehow into difficulty of some kind. And so rather than start a fight with the church, Francis, because you didn't win that fight in those days, the church had its own Knights Templar, it had its own Jesuit order, and Francis didn't really have the wherewithal or the power to do anything about that. But he did have the message and the desire. His heart was aflame with this purpose and mission. So he went about and he found a church that was not far from him that had fallen into disrepair and the bricks were all scattered, maybe from one of Italy's frequent earthquakes. Remember Vesuvius and those guys? Yeah, those are around there somewhere. So he starts rebuilding the church, gathering stones, but he's going about it as if he were the Christ himself, meaning absolute poverty, complete commitment to what was going on, dedication to the service, to love itself, and working away, not bothering anybody. But the purity of his heart and the sincerity of his mission attracted other people to him. And they joined him and said, we'd like to help you because we feel good about this. So in a sense, he was making himself a sort of modern disciple or modern apostle of Christ and gathering followers. Now, before this happened, the Jesuits had kind of taken over or gotten in charge of pretty much what was going on at the Vatican. The Catholic Church was being carried down a pathway of thinking that they had determined, this group within the church itself. And that thinking is that Christ is king and king of the world, king in the kingdom, and that which opposes him in the kingdom, which is everyone who's not of him, and Satan, or that entity, which is all of that energy added together that opposes love or opposes Christ consciousness. So they had divided the world into this opposites, this join the battle of, and they were doing crusades, right? So they kind of had decided that there are those that are for the Christ and those that are against the Christ, and we're going to go do this. And they were looking for the Holy Grail, and all of that stuff was going on somewhere along in here. And I'm not sure of the year. I don't follow all of that too much. But it was about this idea of the king thing, which wasn't necessarily a direct expression of that in Francis, which was Christ itself, which had no enmity with anything and fought not against, but only for, and only loved. So he stayed out of the argument. He was a member of the Catholic Church, and he was a member in good standing, and he had, I don't know whether he was a friar or whatever his designation was, but he was building up quite a group of people who were following his relationship directly to the founder of the order. And it was bringing him into conflict with the Jesuits at a certain point. And so the message finally kind of comes down to him that says, look, you're going to have to make a choice here. You're running it your way, and we're running it our way. And you're creating vows of poverty and vows of service to love and recognition of this transforming agency that gives directly to the heart of any human being everything it needs to live by its relationship to it. And we're over here running a church, and that takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of cooperation from kings and kingdoms and countries who give us substance, gold, and things that we can turn into material expenditures and keep the thing going and fight the good fight against evil for our hero, the king of the world. So this is going on, and Francis gets the message. You've got to either let us be in charge of what you're doing, or you have to not do it, because we don't countenance heresy. We don't countenance people doing things other than what we validate, especially when it comes to the Lord or the Lord of Lords. So Francis had to deal with it. And it was down to a very simple argument. Let the Vatican take over your order, because he wanted to create a Franciscan order within the church and let him run it the way he wanted to, according to the Christ precepts in him, which would have been okay, except the Pope came down on the side of the others and said, no, we need to be in charge. And the alternate to that is you need to be martyred, which means we're going to just toast you over an open fire and claim you and then make you a saint or something later. But we will be in charge of your group. So put us in charge and do what we tell you, which means take money and give some of that money to the church and stuff like that. And don't raise too big a message to all the people about poverty, because that's not going to work out for us. And everything will go. And so he thought about it and took the deal, because without that deal, there's no St. Francis, there's no order, there's just a memory of it, if even that. So we're not arguing about whether that was a right or wrong choice, or even whether I'm telling the story accurately, because I'm probably not. It was a very long time ago, and was a very deeply moving struggle among these people, good or bad, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. But it's the point I'm making is that when you're dealing directly inside you with this power, this light, this incredible brilliance that just informs your heart, and through your heart informs your life, that's confusing if you're trying to do it inside a church with two different ideas about what's going on here. Or if you're outside the church and your friends are Muslims. Or if you're somewhere else and your friends are following some other story, Buddhists or Hindu or whatever the latest flavor for them is, none of which has any argument, true argument, with this thing inside each human being. It's not a choice to follow this ism or that ism or this belief or that belief. It's because that would be intellect. That would involve your mind and the memory of what other people said about something. This is up to you, directly in you, with that directly what is the thing itself, love itself, as a personal, self-conscious, aware nature, just as we are. Now, I differentiate this personally now, and we could talk about it at the Love Foundry. We're happy to do that. I differentiate this from the purely feminine side of love. This is not purely masculine side of love, because the Christ is the son of the Father. He's the son of the mother, which means these two streams of love come together in him. One stream is conscious and requires your will in relationship to it, and gives you power in relationship to will and to the Father. The other is the feminine love that's in nature, the great depth of nature that carries the power of love throughout all things in nature, because love is everywhere, infusing everything with itself to the degree that that which it is infusing can respond to it. So some things can be responded to directly, and some things are more difficult to respond to directly. And when you just open yourself up to nature's love, that would seem to be to us enough. But it's not enough. And why is it not enough? Because there's that in us which keeps us separate from nature, deliberately. The way a fish in water is in the water, but it's separate from the water, because it needs to be an organism functioning independently of the medium in which it's functioning. So in nature, every animal and creature and plant and mineral even is in love. It's wild in love. It's absolutely embraced in it everywhere. And you can let it in, and you can love with it. You can be shared in your actions of love. But there is a barrier between us as human beings who have self-conscious awareness through our free will. There is that in us which separates us from that. When we stand out in the forest, the trees and the nature spirits, and there's many nature spirits that we don't see in the forest that are hanging about. You know, unicorns, I don't know, gnomes, sylphs, fairies, wood elves. I like the wood elves. Stand around a waterfall, and you can feel all kinds of life being generated around you. But even though it's around us, and the life of the tree is more than the bark and the limbs, it's the actual energy swirling through and around the tree. Even though those are all there with us, and it's packed full of it, it doesn't cross over the threshold and interfere with our sense of function. In fact, we're so independent of it that we can cut down the trees, shoot the animals, catch the fish, pave the place over like a Walmart parking lot, and carry on about our business. That sounds extreme, but you know it's being done every day. So there's this love in nature, but there's also that in nature which we can pass through and around with it, but it protects us from nature itself and the entity that pushes through material nature, taking over the human being and bringing it under its control. Now, we are under the control of some of these entities of nature because we choose it to be. We choose materialism. We make ourselves a slave to certain things because we want the convenience of it. We want the Walmart parking lot. And we don't have a powerful enough relationship to the frequency and the livingness of love itself to let it serve our needs without damaging, destroying, paving over, or interfering with the nature around us. So every act we take that is harmful to nature buries us deeper in that overall energetic life that controls material nature. Above that, at very high frequencies where love operates 100%, the kingdom of love, so to speak, and kingdoms above that, that problem does not ensue. But down here on the physical world, it does. So that's one side of nature, and it has love in it, but it apparently wasn't enough because we had that going for us for the last 500,000 years, and we'd come to a place where we needed something more than that, or we weren't going to succeed. We were getting into difficulty, and we're still in difficulty and getting deeper. So in order to remedy that situation, that incredible energy made a decision at some cosmic level in itself, and it said, they're in trouble. They need some help. So I'm going to do something unprecedented, even for my cosmic ilk, my group that I soar around with in the cosmic ism, I'm going to go down and join them in their difficulty. And if they, of their free will, choose a relationship to me, I will interact with them. I'm going to intercede on their behalf, but they have to individually choose me because they're individualities after all. No other human being can choose for you to have a relationship with love. That's our personal choice. Even though you can be baptized a Catholic, at some point you're going to have to make a choice about this yourself and then choose your way to it, identify it, find it, and handle the complications of whatever the Jesuits are up to or the Franciscans or anyone else. Unless you're outside the church, in which case you can go directly to love. It's right there in you. Now, the church might want you to think that you have to come to them to find it. But that's no more true than it was for the Jews when Jesus found it. It came to him. And he said, come on, get it. It's here. It's inside you. Well, it wasn't really in them at the beginning. It was after he was crucified and then got over it and then came back and realized that he was the Spirit of love dispersing himself among the disciples to go out and talk to people from that Spirit. That's why it went so well. How you think to yourself, these are half a dozen guys that didn't know, well, a dozen guys who didn't know what, and a couple of girls who didn't know what they were doing really, because they were kind of fresh off the block. But they had this thing inside them. They had this relationship alive in them, each one. That's what the Pentecost was. After the event, he came back, met with them, and said, okay, here's where we're going forward. I won't be here personally as a person in the form of Jesus, because they kind of did him in, but it'll be in you, in each of you. And your relationship with it is alive and living and powerful. And each one of them saw it in themselves, knew it in themselves, and they knew that when they spoke with the power of that Spirit fused with them. This means they were some pretty amazing folk to do this, to take this on. So off they went with it. And it worked like mad. It started a fire going throughout humanity, which is still going. And the word was kept. So today, inside every single human being, because it's really gone everywhere. Everywhere. Everyone has it in them now. That you can do this. And that doesn't mean you become religious. That doesn't mean you join any cult or ism or organization. The Love Foundry included, although we could use all the help we can get. But it means that it's there in you. And our job is to help you identify it, use your free will, activate it in you, stay with it for long enough to see it working, and then continue doing that until it becomes so powerful in you that there is no chance of you losing connection to it. And then you're going to find that as it pours through every aspect of your life becomes fused with love and transformation and transmutation and grace itself. And the price you pay for that is a continual rejection of hatred and separativeness and that lonely isolation which separates us from each other. And this is what distinguishes this journey in the West from what it was in the East. This is a journey of our group. This is us all becoming conversant with love itself in a great group beneficial condition without any separation within the group of each other from one another. There aren't any Protestants and Catholics or Muslims or Hindu in the group of love. There are lots of different points of view and different sources of information and experience, but it's of one thing. It's of love itself. So that's the universality of this fabulous light in us, this energy in us, this sparkling, fantastic connection. So you don't have to fight your way through all the brush of each of your isms, because we've all got them. Catholicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Mohammedanism. Everybody, and a lot of folks gathered around these various groupings, but all of them are transcended by this one presence that entered the human race. Now, these isms are great currents and streams of life that come into us and flowing through us, bring us into contact and agreement with other groups of beings, groups of souls, groups of cultures and races, in a way that we feel affinity with that ism and that thought idea, badly or truly as it may be represented. And it's hard to validate it at this point because we weren't there when we founded these things. No, we can't find anybody that met Muhammad that actually can say, oh, yeah, no, he lives right down there, right by the 7-Eleven. Or people who say, yeah, I remember when Jesus came through town and we had a chat. These are far enough behind us that we have to kind of take a look at it and say, well, I don't know. But you can look within you, directly into that place in you where that light emanates from. It may be a little bit weak or a little bit dim right now because you might have a lot of cataracts on your inner eye, but you can burn through those with the strength of love. You can burn through those and you can bring it into a living fire. And then you can experience it. You can give yourself some information from living with it and giving it validation in you. And then when you do that, it will then prove itself to you or prove that it's not. And based on that direct experience, not with anyone else's memory, maybe not even with your own memory, with that direct experience in the moment, the living now moment, you will make your path forward. Now, that's a free choice that everyone should have the right to make, and we are dedicated to making that possible by clarifying the choices that you need to make in yourself, moment to moment, that will allow that connection to happen and to grow. And it's not based on anything that happened in your past or mine that we have to take account for. You've already earned it. It's already there. The work's been done to make it available. Now the question is are we going to take advantage of it? Are we going to put it into our experience and make it serve us, and through us serve the greater group that we live in? That's the choice we're up against. And if humanity doesn't do that, then the work of bringing it here, the sacrifice of taking up residence with the human race in our misery, will be for naught. It won't have achieved its purpose. Now, it's a long-range game and a long-range goal, and that life has patience and time on its side because it is endless and deathless. So we can fool around with it. But the more we fool around and not make that choice in our personal lives, the further we get from it, because the world is hardening itself against that very thing. Go take a look. There was a time back ago, maybe 1,000 years ago, maybe 1,500 years ago, when it was very fluid in the consciousness of humanity. Now it's becoming very distant. It's like, well, I don't know that there's any real spirit in that. I don't know that there's any real livingness in it. Maybe it was just a myth. Maybe it's just someone's idea of a party weekend. Probably they were on an ayahuasca journey or peyote or something else. So it becomes something more distant from your children, my children, than it was from our parents or from our parents' parents. And that's a dangerous thing because you can see a trend when it's happening. And the trend towards less consciousness with that event in common human past is stronger. Less consciousness is getting stronger and more consciousness is seemingly getting weaker. But that can change on a dime depending on whether you choose to look within yourself, find it, connect with it, and increase it in your experience to find out, is this something I want or not? If you can't find it in you, then you won't know whether you want it or not. You won't be able to find out. So how dangerous is the time we're in? Well, take a look at the human race. You can see how much rejection of that story is going on, that story ever happened, that story was real. Take your time. Look within. Ask within yourself, not within your mind, because that's your memory. In the eternal now, we have memory of the past. But this is living in the present with us, in the now, directly. That's where you look for it. That's where you isolate love. That's where you find it and bring it into contact with you. This particular free will version comes from a being, a living, self-conscious, aware, eternal, loving expression of life as that is pure love, powerful and living and real. So grab it, check it out, let's find out. And then there are a few things that will help you to build it in. And you don't have to go looking, struggling through all the mistakes of our fathers and forefathers in their building of religions and philosophies and existentialism and intellectualism and all the other things that are in between us and the direct responsive relationship. Just cut out all the middleman and let's deal directly with it. Form a basis of applying it to your life and try it out. And in the experiment of that, the story will unfold. Your relationship will unfold. And your relationship with others in the similar experience with that love will unfold. Then we form new agreements. Then we form new commitments of ourselves to each other and to that energy. And we find out how we like empowering our lives with it. Most of the human race will enjoy empowering their life with this uniquely pure and free energy. Some will not. And that's simply their choice. That's their free will. And we cannot violate that free will, even though it may be someone you love and know and do not want to see make that choice. So we strenuously appeal for people to not go down that path of rejection of the living essential energy of that which entered the human race. But if they do, they do. And if they do, we love them. We don't stop. We just continually include them. Because no one ever goes that far away. And I don't care how far down the road they get, they can turn back and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not feeling good about this choice. I want to come back and renew my chances with this. And love, by its nature, forever includes that opportunity. Even if your choice takes you far, far afield from love and off the planet itself and into some place you've found yourself, it doesn't matter. Redemption is always there, and a path back to love is always there. And this is a eternal commitment, and we're eternal beings, so time will work it out. But our choice with it is up to us right now in this time we're in, because the time we're in is loading the consciousness of humanity with so many difficult negative choices to make. These Hobson's choice difficulties. The bridge is gone, so do I swim the river or do I go around it? So neither choice is the one we would like, but the bridge is gone. Well, what I'm saying is we can build a bridge. And then it's not even difficult. We just say cross the bridge. But you have to cross the bridge. You have to say, I'm going to do that. It's down in me. It's not out there. I don't need anyone's authority out there to tell me to. I don't need anyone to tell me how. I can ask someone to give me their advice, and I'll give you my advice about it. How do you recognize love in you? How do you recognize that fire in you? How do you attract it into your space? How do you build a bridge to it? How do you rule out those things in us which are at war with it? How do you calm all that down? How do you free yourself from your own ego choices of the past, some of which have buried us pretty deep in our habits? Smoking, drugs, sex, crime, sex, smoking, sex, whatever we got ourselves really involved and engaged in, way over the limit, way over the possibilities that were probably healthy and good for us and everybody else. We have to work on those. We have to choose those choices and put them in their perspective. There's nothing good or bad. It's just what improves your life experience and what makes it more difficult. Not in the specific choice. I smoked a lot of cigarettes. I enjoyed smoking. I liked smoking them. I liked lighting them. I liked puffing away on them. And I would do a lot to keep a pack of cigarettes in my pocket all the time. I wouldn't sell the baby formula for the kids, but I would consider it. And so it's not easy to give some of those habits up. But once you do, and the urge of it is off of you, and the health comes back to your lungs and to the rest of your body from not toxifying yourself, it feels good. So that's a greater win in the direction of love. So we're going to work through all of these things because they're all just things to be worked through. But none of it is going to matter if we don't go within, make that choice to strengthen that in our lives and carry it forward into a greater relationship than we now have. Now, some of you have a pretty good relationship with love. Not questioning anybody's relationship with love because that's personal. There's lots of things I think I'm failing at in my relationship with that great gift. But I'm working on it. Meanwhile, I'm strengthening it in every way I possibly can while I'm working on the things that need to be strengthened more. And eventually it's going to start empowering my life so much that I will not have as nearly the difficulty I did when I first started this particular kind of journey. So let's keep that going. Keep looking for that in you. Keep strengthening that in you. And let's bring it around to something that we strengthen it in each other together. That's what a workshop is for. That's why we do a workshop instead of a lecture series. I'm not here to tell you what it is about love. I'm here to help you work out a relationship to it and strengthen it and tell you of your own relationship and strength with that presence. Know the truth of it and have made your decisions about it. Thank you very much. I don't know how I'm going to turn this thing off, but I'm going to text Seb, who's out on the highway somewhere, up around Morro Bay or something. He's taking a break. But let's see if he can do it. It's kind of like a fire hose. You know, once you turn it on, you got to have somebody that can eventually, when the fire's out, turn that thing off. And I'm lame in this department, so I'm here as a guest of someone else who started it up. But not because I have to be, but because I'm just too lame at remembering passwords and doing things. I can blame it on the war. I can blame it on drugs. I can blame it on anything I want. But the fact is, I'm just that way. And so it's got to be worked on. I'm working on it. And love, by the way, is the perfect healer. In life, it is about two things. What makes you healthier? What makes you ill? Without any other judgment. We're not judging something. If you eat something and it makes you ill, that doesn't make that thing bad. It makes it not good for you. Other critters can eat it and thrive on it. We don't. So what makes you healthy in relationship to yourself is what will make you healthy in relationship to love, because love is perfect health. So Now let's see if he can turn this off. I can just quit, but then it just runs, and then he has to go back and edit it, because everybody can do all these things with these wonderful programs we have. This one's StreamYard, which is a podcast program, which seems to be a pretty good app, because it's nothing fancy. Look behind me. That's nothing fancy. So, and it's not one, I don't try to do green screen projections because it makes my outline look strange.